Have you ever noticed yourself reacting in a way that doesn't even feel like the person you want to be? Maybe you snap at someone you love. Maybe you procrastinate on your health goals. Maybe you reach for food when you're stressed, or you avoid something because there's some fear or something there that you're not fully aware of. Often there's a story happening underneath the surface that leads us to react certain ways. So today I'm going to be talking about if there's ways that you might be sabotaging your health, specifically in the stories that you're telling yourself, right? This mindset can affect emotional eating. It can affect stress and our healthy habits. So if you struggle with consistency, emotional eating stress, or feeling like you keep getting in your own way, this episode is going to help you make that connection between the stories we tell ourselves, that mindset piece, and our health. Hey friends, and welcome to the Healthy Beyond 40 podcast. I'm Michelle, mom of 4, military wife, personal trainer, and life coach with my doctorate in physical therapy. Over the years, I've learned that getting healthy is about so much more than food and exercise. It's about the habits we build, the way we think, and the choices we make every day. This podcast is for women who are ready to stop starting over and create changes that actually last. Together, we'll explore how to build healthy habits, strengthen our mindset, and become the woman we want to be. We'll talk about everything from sustainable weight loss and strength training to emotional health, confidence, boundaries, and living a more intentional life. No magic pill here, just practical tools and encouragement to help you create lasting change. So lace up those shoes and let's get moving. So today I'm going to be talking about something that most of us don't really think about, but it can sabotage what our plans are or goals are. And it's the stories that we tell ourselves. And I mean, like these little sentences or beliefs that we might have that might run through our mind. Sometimes we're aware of them, sometimes we aren't. We might have a story about how we're so busy that we can't take care of ourselves, or that we always fail when we try to lose weight. Or I just don't have enough discipline. I just am not structured enough. Or if I say no to someone, they're going to be upset with me. Or I just get too tired at night and I can't do whatever that is, make the dinner, go for a walk. Or maybe we have a story where we tell ourselves, I get to eat that piece of chocolate for a reward because I worked so hard today. So the interesting thing is that we often don't even realize these stories that we're telling ourselves. But these stories influences how we feel, and then how we feel is going to influence what we do or what we don't do. So recently I had a situation that happened, and I'm going to share this story. This story doesn't have anything to do with health, but I want you to think as I'm telling this story, if you've had experiences like this where, right, you have this story, this fear, sort of this situation you're making up that may or may not be true, but it's making you react in a certain way, because this happens in all areas of our lives, whether it's relationships, with our health, with the goals that we have for ourselves. So my teenager son, he was going on a church youth group trip, and they were supposed to wear the Thunder, the basketball team, t-shirt for the first day of this so that the kids would be easy to spot once they got to the event. And I had reminded him a couple times before it, probably more than a couple, probably at least a few. And we get to the church, and as we're walking up, I realized that he didn't have a Thunder shirt on. And I know he has a Thunder shirt. I had bought him one before. And immediately a story started playing in my head. And it was like, the youth group leader is going to notice that he doesn't have the shirt on. Like, is she going to say something to me? Is she going to think I didn't prepare him, or that I'm not a good mom? Like, I was catching myself, sort of. And so I could hear these thoughts going in on my head, versus most of the time, sometimes those thoughts are just going on and we're not fully aware of them. But my reaction was, as we're walking up to the church, to nag him why didn't you wear the shirt? I told you to. And right, that's not how I want to act, dropping him off, nagging him about a t-shirt, when at this point we can't change what's going to happen. And the problem was that my brain kept creating this story about how the youth group leader was going to react to me. And if I got down to the core of it, which I couldn't do in the morning, right? I was worried that I might feel embarrassed that my son didn't show up properly. So, right, I'm going to nag him and be a little upset at him as I'm dropping him off for a few days. Like, that's not how I want to be. And the reality was, the youth group leader said nothing to me, and it didn't really matter. And there were a few other kids that also did not have a Thunder t-shirt on. So, right, I had this story that I was creating inside my mind about what this other person might think of me or how it might go. And it was all a story. None of it was true. And it changed the way I acted. Right? The kind of mom that I want to be is patient, is encouraging, to love and support my kids. Right? At that point, nagging someone about what they did or didn't wear isn't going to do anything except, right, cause a little friction in the relationship. So I wanted to share that because I thought it was just a good example of a story. And as I was experiencing it, I could just like realize that I started acting that way. And pretty quickly I could see that I was like telling myself this story about it. But we do this all the time with different situations in our life. So I talk about this a lot when I am coaching a client, and even for my own self-growth, right? I had to really look at this little situation and what happened so that I can act differently next time, so that I can catch myself quicker, that I can notice like, oh, I might be embarrassed. That might be a trigger. And so a lot of times when we have these stories or we have a thought, it creates an emotion or a feeling. And that emotion or feeling drives the behavior. So in this situation, right, that embarrassment drove my behavior to nag at my son, even though that wasn't going to get a result that I wanted. So and as I'm saying these, right, we add a lot of things to these stories. So someone might have ate dessert after dinner. And the story that they tell themselves is, I have no self-control. I ruined everything. And right, they're feeling shame and they're feeling frustration. And their action might be that they might as well keep eating whatever they want. They can't do anything about this. They just don't have self-control. And so they get this full story going around it, and they keep living out that story because they're not bringing their full awareness to it, and they're not intentionally trying to change that story. They're not intentionally trying to look at what is the full truth. So this might be another example. Someone says, I have no willpower. And that story, that thought, becomes an identity to them. They really hold on to it as if it's 100% true. They think they're someone who can't stick to things. But right, maybe the truth is there might be a few areas where they might struggle. But right, 80% of their other life, they may not. And they do have willpower. And they are someone who can stick with things. So they're not seeing the full truth of the situation. Maybe they've just never learned the skills in that certain area to help them create consistency. But when we go around believing a lie, believing a story that isn't true, we keep acting and reacting from that. Another one is sort of, I already messed up, so why bother? And this is a good example of the all or nothing mindset. And this one is huge when it comes to health and weight loss and taking care of yourself. So they think that one choice becomes proof that they have failed. Versus maybe a better story to tell themselves is, one decision does not define me. And I can make my next choice that aligns with my values and what I want to do. And just because I messed up in this one little area doesn't mean I messed up altogether. Right? A lot of times when I'm on coaching calls with people, I always like to start with like, what went well or what are the wins? Like, we have to bring those out because when we're on a journey in our health, we zoom in right on the things that we struggle with. And we miss those things that are going well. And that leads to a lot of discouragement. So we have to really notice the good things and amplify the good things. And then we can also work on what is the struggle. But when the whole focus is on the struggle, it can get very discouraging. So I encourage you to just start becoming more aware of your thoughts and some of the stories that you might be telling yourself. This can be a great journal exercise. And when you notice that you're reacting in a way that you don't like or is not in line with your values, asking yourself, what are you feeling? What is this story I keep telling myself that is creating the feeling? Because our thoughts and our stories are what's going to create our feelings and our emotions that we then react from. And a big one is this story 100% true? And sometimes we need a coach or a friend or someone else to help us see that, because we might feel very stuck and we have a very hard time seeing something else that is also true. And this is why health coaching and a health journey is about so much more than food or exercise. Because we can talk about workouts, we can talk about nutrition and habits, and those all are important pieces. But underneath that is our thoughts and our beliefs that are driving our feelings and our choices. Because if we don't change the story, we're often going to keep repeating the same patterns. Maybe we can pull something off for a month, but if we haven't changed those underlying thoughts and beliefs, we're going to eventually circle back to what we used to do. So these stories you tell yourself matter. And we have to remember that every thought we have is not always true. It is not always 100% true. But our brain listens to these stories we repeat ourselves, whether they are true or partially true or even false. But the good news is that you guys can start noticing these stories that you're telling yourself. You can start to question them, and you can start to choose the thoughts and stories that you want to tell yourself for the person you want to become. You can help yourself see more of the fuller truth. So I encourage you that if you're over 40 and you're really feeling stuck in a cycle of starting over, maybe you're struggling with consistency, emotional eating, or feeling like you just can't get yourself to follow through, then this is something that we can work on in coaching. We can look at the habits, the mindset, the stories that are keeping you stuck so that you can really start to create some lasting change and dig a little deeper, work on that layer underneath. So if that's you, I encourage you to just set up a free health coaching call with me. This is like no hassle. It's just a time where you get to share what are your goals, what are your struggles. You get to talk with me one-on-one to ask me some questions. We can see if we are a fit for coaching. It is no pressure. And I always offer a 10% discount to military, police, and frontline workers. So just mention that on that free coaching call. All right, friends, I hope you guys are having a good week. And I hope that you guys notice at least one story this week. And I would love to hear it in my Facebook group, Healthy Beyond 40. Feel free to share that story so you can encourage others, because so often these things that we're experiencing, other people are experiencing too. And when we can feel that community and that empathy and that compassion, it can help us to get over the hump sometimes. So feel free in my Facebook group, Healthy Beyond 40, to share what your story is that you caught yourself in this week. All right, friends, have a good week.